Thank you, everybody, for joining us for the 8th episode and the final one in this series. We'll be picking it up again in a month or two. Today, we're going to be discussing media advancements across the entire sports industry, focusing on college, of course, but also including pro. We're going to be talking about OTT platforms, which are dramatically changing the college sports landscape, emerging opportunities for professional sports leagues, regional sports networks, connecting to college athletics, and then finally, linear and digital broadcast platforms and best practices in digital content transmission. Mike Schreck will be the moderator of this, and I will introduce him last. First, in no particular order, Ryan Crelin, the commissioner of the ECHL, a true visionary, one of our couple of non-college clients. We're excited to work with Ryan and his league. Has been very focused throughout his long career at the ECHL on overall league operations, financial initiatives, emerging media, and then very creative league-wide partnerships, including a marketing initiative in the ECHL Geico relationship, where the goalposts are painted blue in Geico's theme colors. Greg Moore, commissioner of the SIAC, the Southern Intercollegiate Athletic Conference, a Division II HBCU, has totally redefined the role of a conference commissioner during his decade plus at the SIAC. He's negotiated corporate partnerships, creative media packages, administered conference championship tournaments, and crafted innovative digital and social media strategies. Greg was a key factor in launching the first integrated conference-wide digital platform across NCAA Division II and serves on multiple NCAA committees as well as boards outside of college athletics, where his commercial and legal expertise bring enormous value. We're also pleased to work with Shawn Heilbron, athletic director, Stony Brook University, who has really driven the Stony Brook brand and the Stony Brook athletics brand through some very innovative media practices and implementation of Together We Transform, 2015 to 2020, a 5-year strategic plan. Stony Brook has won the first ever America East Commissioners Cup under Shawn's watch. In summer 2019, Shawn drove a deal with Sportsnet New York, making Sportsnet New York the home of Stony Brook athletics. Tony Geronimos, long-term media executive, director of collegiate sales at LTN Global, is a 15-year veteran of the college industry, focusing on technology and content monetization. He is truly innovative, and the transformative video platform has recently been leveraged to virtualize the NFL draft coverage and also partner with us at CSMG on the first 24/7 college esports network. Finally, Vereen, a caster and on-air host, as well as director of business development at ESTV, which is a linear-based esports network, also adding traditional sports to this moving forward as we approach the new year. Brook hosts Campus Lore, which includes video interviews with some of the National Football League's top players and their experiences, also working as a color commentator and analyst with Fox. And finally, moderating the panel, my business partner, Michael Schreck, longtime executive with the New York Mets and Westwood One, and privileged to have Mike as well as Neil Malvone as my business partners for the past 6 years at Collegiate Sports Management Group. Period. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Mike.
Thanks, Ray, and welcome everybody. Appreciate you joining us here for episode 8, where we're going to talk about the ever-evolving media landscape, and thank you for our panelists for joining us here today. Ryan Crelin, Commissioner of the ECHL, I'm going to start with you. It's a crazy world we're living in right now with these crazy times, especially in the media landscape. What are some of the things that you're watching closely as it relates to media trends that could impact the ECHL organization?
Well, certainly the rise of streaming and OTT, I mean, that's no secret. Everybody's got their eye on that. We've been streaming games since 2004, but the change in consumption from 2004 over the past 15, 16 years is drastically different as you talk about cutting the cord and shifting to streaming. And while that has changed from the consumer level, on the other side, the decrease in cost of production, and you've really seen that here in a COVID-19 world in terms of the ability to do high-level production from afar, the ability to transmit, not necessarily over satellite anymore, certainly streaming, fiber, things of that nature. So as streaming and OTT have become more widely accepted, the cost of production going down, we really have gone from not necessarily just being a sports property, but to developing our own, channel and subscription product, the ECHL .TV product. So we're not just a sports property; we're almost managing our own media house or subscription channel. And you've certainly seen the big leagues do that by creating their own networks. We haven't quite gotten there, but certainly our ECHL TV product, and maybe we will get there because of all the changes in the landscape. So that is first and foremost the trend to look at. And then you combine that with the fact that because of digital and social, you can have real-time interaction, getting feedback from fans and having conversation, freely and openly in real time. It makes for an exciting landscape, but just a lot of moving pieces. So that's something we are attunedly focused on.
Ryan, I appreciate that. Commissioner Moore, you've done a phenomenal job as it relates to your media ecosystem within the conference. What are you doing and what will you continue to do as attendance habits continue to shift and no one knows what's going to end up happening with COVID and attendance? How do you continue to evolve your media ecosystem?
I think Ryan, well, first of all, thank you for having me. I think Ryan kind of touched upon what we think about more often than not is the engagement piece. We all kind of know, the cord cutting trends and how streaming platforms are kind of ripening and maturing into, mature content consumption platforms. But I think the next challenge is really figuring out ways to engage them. I think, I also believe that COVID has kind of accelerated that, because to the degree that sports have always been, social events, cultural, social events, and to the degree that's been kind of curtailed by virtue of the pandemic that we're dealing with now, I think folks have to be able to figure out ways to leverage these platforms to engage those fans in ways that they otherwise would be engaged if they were sitting next to each other in a venue. So, people are talking about sports betting. I know that's kind of taboo in a college sports context in terms of sports wagering, but there are non-monetary ways which you can engage fans in terms of in your content, in terms of making them, giving them maybe non-monetary prizes in terms of in a sports wagering context. So to me, it's really about engaging. I look at Twitch and how they broadcast their football package, Amazon on Twitch, where you had a streaming conversation taking place during the broadcast. To Ryan's earlier point, I think you got to begin to bring kind of elements of social media and in those platforms, and merge that into the content platforms to begin to have the kind of conversations that Ryan referred to.
I appreciate that. Shawn, you've done a great job with campus-wide initiatives and taking your athletics hat on one end, and then you're wearing about 15 other hats these days. Talk a little bit about how you help the overall campus brand through athletics and through your vision.
Yeah, Mike, that's what we're here to do. Part of athletics' role on a campus is to shine the spotlight and serve as the platform to showcase all the academics and research that goes on at Stony Brook. So we take that very seriously. And, we know that when our teams have success, applications for undergraduate enrollment go up. It benefits the entire campus. So what we've tried to do is focus on that brand building. That was a big part of our 5-year plan that Ray mentioned. Together we transform. A huge component is certainly our streaming opportunities and linear opportunities, but really more importantly, it's how we approach our business model. And one of the things that we've tried to do over the last year is really shift from a traditional communications office and approach to providing services to media, very, stat-driven press releases to more of a content-driven communications focus. And, what we did is we hired a guy by the name of Adam Rubin, who is a longtime journalist in the New York area. And we've shifted the model to, drive content and kind of get out of that. I have this sport, so I'm only going to focus on that, and really focus on the broader context of how we tell our stories. So if you look at our website, we do a lot more feature stories, a lot more character focus on our student athletes to try to draw that connection. But again, our role is to shine the spotlight on Stony Brook. And, that's one of the challenges when we're in a period right now where we aren't competing. Driving value to campus has never been more important. So we're really focused on delivering value, delivering content. And even though we aren't competing, we can tell the Stony Brook story in new ways, innovative ways, and I think better ways that will only help us when we get back to competition.
Yeah, absolutely. Shawn and I will tell you firsthand, seeing you evolving over time and telling that story has been great. And congratulations on that. And thanks for being here today. Tony, let's come to you here. So you've been on the network side, you've been on the technology side, and you've really been at the intersection of sports and media for most of your career. Talk a little bit about where you see tech evolving to and some of the things that are going on that you like.
Sure. As far as the stuff going on that we keep an eye on, the LTN in general we're in many, many different places, right? Not just in sports, although sports is a big part of our company. The things that I'm keeping an eye on personally right now are like going into the spring. A lot of these conferences are moving their sports to the spring. How does that overlap? We already have the overlap between the fall and the winter sports that is tough for a lot of athletic departments. But people need to think about from an inventory perspective. If I've got football and baseball and softball and basketball and all these sports all happening at the same time, where are they going to live? You don't have enough personnel. There's not enough TV inventory for it. Where are we going to put these games so that people can see them? How are we going to rob Mary or rob Peter to pay Paul so that we can have a football game, but basketball is going to suffer? So we kind of interesting to see that play out. And then also, AI has been something that we've been watching a lot. I've talked to several different companies that do AI video production, highlight production, different things like that. Those are really interesting. Are they, a lot of them are in a really good place right now. Where are they going to go next? And how do we not necessarily let them take over what we do, but how do we integrate that into existing products and in existing broadcast opportunities? TV agreements are always something that we keep an eye on. Those change not as quickly, luckily, but they affect how we do our business. If you look at, we'll use the Mountain West, for example. Mountain West did their TV agreement with Fox and CBS, and all the production was on it was on the hands of Fox and CBS. The schools had nothing to do with it, versus typical ESPN agreements where they say, great, you can be on our broadcast, but we're not going to have you, or you're going to produce them yourself, right? So they give you a lot of money, say build your own venue or build your own production studio and do it that way. So how's that going to kind of play out? It's two different approaches. Name, image, likeness. I know everybody on this call is probably trying to figure out what that's going to look like in a couple of years. That is something that's going to mean a lot to us, because now we have not only athletic departments and universities that have a brand, but you have athletes that can have a brand. How are they going to use that to their advantage? And then betting, somebody mentioned that already. Betting is going to be a big driver for this business. I mean, historically it has been anyway. We do a lot with horse racing right now. And when you talk LTN, historically, for those that don't know, really focuses on transport. And moving video from point A to point B in the fastest time possible. So sub-second latency. With horse betting, if I've got a race happening in point A and I've got somebody watching point B, I can't have any delay there, or else they might be able to put a bet in before it happens where they are. So be able to kind of combat that is something that LTN is working on pretty regularly.
Thanks for that, Tony. Appreciate it. The next panelist is Brock Vereen. And I'm going to get him in trouble by telling everybody he's the best Vereen football player in the family, and that now his brother's going to be all over him. But if you've seen his highlights, you would agree with me. Brock, I appreciate you being here. And so congratulations on everything you guys continue to build at ESTV. Brock, knowing a little bit of historical, when Turner and ESPN got involved with esports and some of the audience and metrics challenges that they had, what is ESTV doing that may differentiate yourselves in the market?
Sure. Well, thanks for getting me in trouble, but thanks for having me as well. Yeah, so the esports space was a huge question mark a couple years back. Like you said, Turner and Fox and ESPN dabbled in a little bit with lackluster numbers, and they weren't really sure what to do with it, and everybody kind of backed off. ESTV, quite honestly, has benefited tremendously from outside forces, as much as we want to take credit for, as much as we can. The fact is, over these past couple months, almost a year ago now, there was a huge event where Ninja, who is probably the biggest streamer out there, Travis Scott and Drake, two of the biggest rappers in the world, hopped on a game with him, and they played, and that was kind of the start of this new thinking of esports. Has been around for a long time, but it has been in the shadows of traditional sports, and that, as well as slightly benefiting from COVID, as sad as it is to say, a lot of the traditional networks had to go back and say, hey, look, these numbers were crazy when Drake and Travis Scott and Ninja were playing Fortnite. Maybe we can do something here. And then COVID hits, and you have Kevin Durant and other basketball stars playing 2K on ESPN. You have Richard Sherman in a Call of Duty commercial that's being played every single NBA playoff commercial break, essentially. You have Madden tournaments being played and all these things. You have a NASCAR event on Fox, which got over 1.5 million viewers. And so I say all that to say we've benefited tremendously of this shift of, okay, this isn't just some niche thing that a random 16-year-old is getting $3 million. No, this is a legitimate entity that Gen Z is quite honestly obsessed with. It was important for us to be a linear channel, not just digital, because to the casual sports fan, there is a credibility that comes with being a linear channel. So that was important for us. So I guess on our end, we have to make sure that we know what people want to watch, which games are trending upward, which games you don't need to air as much. But the fact remains, we have benefited tremendously from outside forces and just the general landscape of esports, the way it's seen, being shifted from a thing that teenagers do in their parents' basement to what professionals are doing and making a lot of money doing it as well.
Thank you, Brock. Appreciate that. Let's change gears a little bit here and focus on fan engagement for the next series of questions. Ryan, I'm going to come back to you here. You're constantly thinking about ways to evolve the league and fan engagement, and you've struck a partnership with Nickelodeon on multiple levels. Talk a little bit about that, and then some of the other things that may help with fan engagement as we go forward.
Yeah, so it's not just Nickelodeon. We've been able to partner with some really big and really international entertainment brands, Nickelodeon, DC Comics, Marvel Comics, working on a few more for next year. And the thought process being that, we're certainly community and entertainment and hockey, but how do we bring people in who may be not hockey fans or not familiar with the game? So being able to partner with those large-scale entertainment brands that speak with so many different other sub-communities within our markets, have it come into the game, be jerseys, video board spots, trivia, characters walking around the arena, the ability to create additional entertainment beyond just the hockey game and welcome new fans to the building. And, Nickelodeon talks to one subject, comics speaks to another, and it's really worked out quite well for us. And that's why we're so eager to get back into our arenas as soon as possible.
I appreciate that, Ryan. Commissioner Moore, sticking with the same theme of fan engagement, but putting a little twist on it as it relates to name, image, and likeness, and more brands focusing on this. I know you've been on panels, you've had a lot of discussions with folks as it relates to name, image, and likeness, and would love your perspective on the content piece and the difference maybe between how you see Division I Power 5 versus Division II athletes and the focus of name, image, and likeness.
Yeah, my concern, when I was asked to testify before the New York legislature about this issue, I did raise the concern that NIL has the risk of creating a wider gap between the haves and have-nots in college sports. And you mentioned Division I. I mean, to me, there's going to be student athletes who will be able to monetize their name, image, and likeness, who play for schools and play in leagues that have large, multimedia agreements, and then there are going to be student athletes who don't. In my sense, that the real opportunity for smaller leagues and smaller properties to give their student athletes opportunities to monetize those kind of rights is going to be by aggregating those student athletes. So, for example, there's not going to be a Zion Williamson in our league that has 2 million Instagram followers who will be able to independently strike their own kind of deals. I'm sure that there'll be some examples of that, but in the main, I think at smaller properties, the burden is going to be using platforms like Open Doors or Influencer to aggregate all of the social media ecosystems of our respective student athletes, and then going to a third-party brand and hopefully creating some type of organic grassroots value proposition. But I do think that in the context of Division II and Division III, the economic opportunities are going to be much, much less significant on an individual student-by-student basis.
Appreciate that. Shawn, let's stick with the same theme here. You obviously, as a Division I athletic director, what are your questions from some of your staff members and or players? Are they asking you questions about NIL? And if so, non-proprietary, can you share some of the feedback and thoughts?
It's really interesting, Mike. I am part of the legislative solutions group that is creating this recommended legislation. So I've been on the inside of it. And I've been talking about it with our student athletes from the outset. I really have tried to be transparent, and quite frankly, there aren't a lot of questions. It's a space that I think everyone has a little trepidation about, but it's really trying to get everyone to understand and be educated on what it means. And there's a lot of conversation around what the institutional responsibilities are. Because we can't hire a bunch of new compliance people, and I do think there's going to be opportunities for athletes at all levels, and it could be something as simple as promoting a camp or a clinic that you're running and identifying as a student athlete at a particular university. So I agree. I think it's really going to be about helping them without it overtaking our day jobs. So I do think platforms like Influencer are important. We're looking here internally at a data asset management system with campus that we can help drive images and video to our athletes so that they can use it for their social media channels. But I think it's going to be just educating the student athletes on what this all means and then how they can take advantage of it. It's going to be a very small number of elite athletes that will really see the high level deals, but I think everyone has an opportunity to benefit from it.
Thank you, Shawn. Brock, from a gaming standpoint and from the students playing and participating in esports, they seem to be a little bit further along with some of the brand connections to some of the gamers. Talk about it from that perspective.
Absolutely. One of the biggest things to understand is that Gen Z is ride or die. I mean, there are major corporations who have to cut ties with companies because they get a tweet every 10 seconds saying, hey, I don't like this company. I don't like their practices. You've lost my business. And they mean it. I mean, they're not empty threats. They're not just children who are just going to take whatever you give them. It's fascinating to see. They understand that their dollar is power, and it's fascinating to see 15 and 16-year-olds understand that. Just recently, Activision, a major company who makes Call of Duty, 75 million players using it right now, had to cut ties with a company in Saudi Arabia because they got a lot of backlash for putting on a tournament out there for them. So from a sense of accountability, for a sense of responsibility, going forward, anybody in the esports space has to understand this is not a generation of people who are going to take anything you give them. They're going to hold you to a moral standard and to moral practices that they agree with, because the fact is, pre-COVID, there could be 50 or 60 NCAA games on TV somewhere. There are thousands of video games at their disposal any second. So they can leave you just like that whenever they want to. And that is a challenge, but it's a good challenge. But to anybody in that space, I would say do not take them lightly. They are a fascinating group of people. And if you want to get in that space, you need to understand them.
Appreciate that, Brock. Tony, let's talk about cost savings. And I know it's something that everybody on this call is thinking about, and folks around the world in any business that you're involved in right now. How is LTN set up to help some of the conferences and schools or other media outlets in the future as it pertains to different things that LTN is doing from a cost saving standpoint?
Sure. So just to give a little bit of background, maybe everybody's not familiar, but LTN overall is based of 4 different pillars. There's one called Create, that's a production arm. We have our transport pillar, which is getting that video from A to B, which we talked about before. There's a dynamic ad insertion pillar, and then the 4th one is cloud-based solutions, called Control, doesn't matter what the name is. The point of all that, though, is that there's a couple different ways that we can help people save money. The easiest and most direct one is really when we're talking about linear TV, getting your video onto television versus using a satellite. A lot of people historically do satellite's being phased out. With the influx of fiber-backed networks like LTN is a fully managed fiber-backed network. It's a lot safer, but not safer necessarily, but it's a lot easier to get your video to a linear broadcast channel and a lot cheaper than using a satellite. So that's really the most direct one. From a production perspective, which is really where you can see the biggest amount of savings immediately. If you look at what we've talked about a little bit already, with COVID happening and all that kind of stuff, there's been a lot of remote production. And what remote production allows is a couple different things. One, where historically, if you were broadcasting a game, let's say you had a football game and you bring in a truck, you have 1 staff, and you're going to do satellite. Those are 3 assets that are specific to your particular venue, and they can't be used anywhere else. LTN has built a 30,000 square foot facility in Kansas City where we can actually produce games from there. And so we could produce up to about 25 games at the same time. But more importantly, we have full-time staff on board. So instead of you having to bring in 1 producer that does 1 game, I can have 1 producer do 3 games throughout the day, whether it's football, basketball, whatever sport happens to be. So you really start to see economies of scale there. Secondly, is also from an equipment perspective, instead of using, TriCaster, everybody knows, instead of using your 1 TriCaster for 1 game, I can use 1 TriCaster for 4 games throughout the day. So you really start to see that those economies of scale take place. And because of that, the cost goes down pretty significantly. The other thing that we look at is how do we incorporate different technology into that broadcast? And we talked about this a little bit at the jump. AI particularly. AI is an awesome tool. Instead of just saying AI take over the whole thing, how can we use AI technology to bring those video angles into the broadcast and make a better broadcast overall? And maybe it also allows us to have less people on site. So you could have, instead of 5 camera people on site, you have 0 camera people on site, and it's all being done in a remote facility. Everything can be hardwired at that point. You have your 1 AI camera picks up a lot of the angles, then you throw in a couple of PTZs in different areas, and all those feeds come back into that central location, and we're able to produce a broadcast without having anybody there. The cost savings at that point are pretty immeasurable, and that's why you're seeing the cost go down pretty quickly.
Thank you, Tony. I'm actually going to turn it over to the chat room for 1 second here, because there's an interesting question. And Commissioner Moore, I'm going to direct this to you to start. But as part of the question, it says, as part of esports discussion, is it worth the name, image, and likeness hurdles to develop NCAA-based video games again? And would love your thought process as it pertains to the video game industry and where that could be headed.
I think what makes the video game entertainment, sports-based entertainment software titles like Madden and EA Sports successful in a professional sports context is that they don't have to strike deals with 450 basketball players, for example. They work with the players union. So I think my question is, if you're going to do a video game, there have to be some type of group licensing entity, I would imagine, to make that, to make that a reality, as opposed to trying to strike individual deals with a few thousand student athletes. So I'd like to see what that looks like in terms of, what entity is going to be governing some type of group licensing type of arrangement. I think that would be a hurdle.
Interesting. Brock, would love your thoughts on that.
At some point, I think when you look at the amount of revenue being generated from these software titles, that, at some point, someone's going to figure it out.
Yeah, interesting. Brock, if you could weigh in on that topic as well, obviously being a gamer, interesting to hear your thoughts.
Sure. It's definitely, I feel for anybody on the collegiate side of things, because as a fan, you just say, hey, this was such a successful game. This is so fun. Every year you hear millions of people complaining why there isn't one. Just make it, just do it, and like Greg is saying, it would be absolute chaos. I want that game more than anything in the world, but as I've been with ESTV and really understood how a network works and how licensing works, right now, the way that things are set up, it's simply impossible. And whoever it is that takes that leap, they're going to have to either knock on the door of hundreds of colleges or dozens of conferences. And by that time, how much money can you possibly make? Because then you get into the issue, well, does the SEC have a claim to more percent than a Mountain West, right? Simply because they're on TV more, and they have Alabama and LSU in the same conference. There are so many questions that have to be answered. And from a standpoint as well, though, the pressure is on, because like we discussed earlier, kids, especially basketball, but football as well, kids are coming out of high school. 5-star recruits are nationally known. They have millions of followers on Instagram. They have Nike deals the day that they leave college. They are entities now. Look at an extreme example, but LeBron James kid. Now, he is LeBron James kid, but even the 4 other starters on that team are household names already. So that's only going to make it more difficult for a negotiation standpoint, because if I am a 5-star quarterback and everybody knows my name, I'm at USC, I don't want to be lumped in with the rest of the Pac-12. No, a bunch of people are going to play with me. I'm selling jerseys. I'm doing all this. Now I'm getting my own agent and lawyer and negotiate. I'm rambling, but there are so many questions that have no answer in sight. But as a video game fan, I hope it happens one day, but I just don't see it in the foreseeable future.
Thank you for that, Brock. We have another question from the audience here, which is, would like to hear a comment on security, student populations, those that are most prone to protest, arenas, practice fields, events. Shawn, I'm going to kick it to you because of the campus relationship, and I'm sure there's a lot of things being put in place, but if you could start to address that would be helpful.
Yeah, it's a great question, because that's what's always at the top of mind. And this is a very interesting time, certainly to be in athletics at any level. But in the intercollegiate space, we have talked about our student athletes utilizing their voice. At no point in time have student athletes had the platform that they do now. You see the actions from athletes across the country, whether at the University of Texas. It's really incredible. Mississippi State, they are taking full advantage of the opportunity. And the interesting thing is for all student athletes, understanding what comes with stepping out into a space. I personally support student athletes expressing themselves, particularly in this environment, around areas of social injustice. I think it's really, really important. But we all understand, whether it's on social media or literally in person, not everyone is on board with that. And there are people who feel that it's become politicized in that way, when we really are encouraging student athletes to speak up on issues that are important to them. So what we try to do is we try to work in tandem. we have conversations. We are fortunate just on the issue of social injustice. We have a Black student athlete huddle here at Stony Brook that was formed 2 years ago to talk about, for our Black student athletes, their experience and not sweep things under the rug. So I think this is an interesting time because our student athletes have been ready for these conversations. I'm not so sure all of our fans and supporters are. So what we have to do is bring all of that together. But first and foremost, we're here to protect our student athletes, and we talk to them about the responsibility that they have in the platform. But I do get concerned, particularly on social media, when we see student athletes attacked, and it's really unfortunate, but it's something that we have got to continue to plow forward with, but make sure that our student athletes are safe in doing so.
Yeah, Shawn, thank you for that. I'm going to change gears a little bit.
Mike, to that point.
Yeah.
I think, another important thing to keep in mind is, protests to me are a byproduct of young people feeling that they're not being heard. So to the earlier point, doing what you can to have these discussions early on and giving these kids every sense that they have a platform to express themselves, I think can help mitigate the risk of the kind of events that can occur in an arena that can create the kind of security risks that the questioner kind of raised. So I think it's very important. And when you look at Division I and you see the kind of incidents that are being reported on different platforms regarding how players are treated and how they're, I think that's the byproduct of, protest is the byproduct of that kind of behavior. College sports has for some time has had a problem with inclusion. I mean, I practiced law for many years. I've not seen too many environments that are as, that lack the level of it, that have it less inclusiveness than college athletic departments, which is ironic because generally speaking, people believe campuses are, kind of bastions of liberalism and progressivism. But when you look at the athletic departments, very often the only people of color are the student athletes. So making them feel less objectified, I think is important.
Yeah, Greg, Shawn, thank you both for your feedback and perspective on that topic. Ryan, I'm going to change gears a little bit here. And I read something the other day, and I know the ECHL is not the NFL, but there's 12 teams in the NFL that are pushing to allow fans in the building when the NFL season starts, and the other teams have said no to it or voted against it. How do you navigate that as a league commissioner when a lot of your states have different philosophies, governors have different philosophies? How are you handling that piece of it?
Well, it's very complex. I mean, we're in 19 states and 2 Canadian provinces. So you're dealing with 2 countries, a border in between, which remains closed, and then all the different jurisdictional approaches to the issue. One thing, and I've said it before, we've been steadfast that we're not prepared to open the season until we can return with fans, and that's across the board. That's who we are as a product in terms of minor league sports and bringing people together, player access, and our financial model is built off of people in the building. And so we've got that laser focus, but the decision is out of our hands. We're doing everything we can in terms of an employee protocol, a player protocol, and fan protocols to propose to our various jurisdictions. But until the state governors or provincial premiers allow us to return to our buildings, we will be, it's out of our hands. So it's a complex issue. We're trying to incorporate best practices and put those plans together, working with our venues as well. And we understand the predicament, I suppose, that governors are in. They're charged with protecting their constituents and their populations. And so it's just finding that balance. I think the overarching thing for me is I do believe there is a path forward, a focus on hygiene, a focus on masks, and a focus on distancing. And that's how we can get people back into our buildings and resume play.
Ryan, thanks for that. I know we've gotten a little bit off topic as it pertains to being a media panel, but I think that all of the things that we've discussed today are really relevant for today. I'm going to bring it back to the media side and come to you, Tony, as it relates to social media and everybody being a quote unquote journalist these days and a lot of different social media entities out there. Where do you see this going, and how does social media integrate with traditional media?
Sorry about that, I messed up on mute. You know, social media is an interesting beast. It's given everybody in the world really a voice, which is incredible. Part of one of the acquisitions we made recently was a company called Make TV, based out of Cologne, Germany. And they have an interesting product called Live Video Cloud. And the product aside, the concept is to be able to ingest an infinite number of live feeds at the same time. And the key driver behind it was citizen journalism. So giving people out in the field the opportunity to send live video in to a news broadcast or to a sports broadcast, whatever it happens to be. So much like social media does, it gives the average Joe the opportunity to have a voice. But to give you an example, we actually use the same technology for the NFL draft. So everybody got QR codes. They were able to send their video into the NFL draft and be part of that broadcast. But really, so often we see things through the lens of the broadcasters and the hosts, to get the average Joe out there and give them an opportunity to share their point of view, their vision, what they want to see. Just like this panel, we've had a few questions about esports that have come in and they're great. Where Brock may be very well versed in esports and he may say, well, it's never going to work because of X, Y, and Z. We're over here saying, I don't care. I just want my college football game back, right? And to hear that passion from the fans and from the people in the field, whether it's coming from social media or from any other live video source, is great.
Brock, you guys have a relationship with the NFL Alumni Association, and a lot of folks on your board and folks in your business are former NFL players. Talk about the content development, and if there isn't a season or there's a truncated season, how important is that content, and how do you marry that to the brand marketing community?
Sure. Yeah. Well, like you said, myself, my older brother, Shane Vereen, and Amon Green, our former players. Mark Watts, our VP, was at NFL Network working with talent for quite some time. So we have very, very deep NFL roots. And because of that, the partnership with the NFL Alumni Association made perfect sense, already knowing people over there and them really tapping into, if you were to go into any NFL locker room outside of who they're playing that week, the most popular conversations are who can beat who in Madden, who's better at Call of Duty, who's better at Fortnite, so on and so forth. The two really go hand in hand. Every locker room has a TV and an Xbox plugged right into it. And credit to the NFL Alumni Association for realizing that these two can go hand in hand, and pushing those things pre-COVID, putting up tournaments pre-COVID. And so that partnership made perfect sense. They understood the world of esports. We understood the world of the NFL. And so that's why that match happened to work out. From a college football standpoint, of course, the SEC, the ACC, and the Big 12 are going on with their season. I think you would be hard-pressed to find someone who is 100% fully confident that there won't be some kind of hiccup or delay or, God forbid, a cancellation. And because of that, it's our job to be responsible and have things in place. And whether that is a tournament of this school versus this school, or maybe it's just showing a Madden tournament just within this team or things in place. But just last week we had we aired the 2016 NCAA championship Villanova basketball team versus the 2018 championship team, and it was just they weren't even playing. It was just a simulation, and they were just trash talking each other about whose team could beat whose, and the engagement was incredible. People want their sports fix. We prefer it in reality, but because of COVID, if it doesn't happen that way, we still need to scratch that itch. And if it comes in the form of a digital video game, then we hope that the CSMG is ready to organize some tournaments, because we are more than ready and capable to produce them. But I guess the short answer is people are going to need their sports fix one way or another. and how that gets delivered will be determined by how we continue to handle the COVID situation.
Absolutely. Shawn, here's a tough question for you, given the seat you sit in. With everything going on in the world today, right? Health, economy, hurricanes, coronavirus, et cetera, are college sports really relevant right now?
I saw that question and was hoping you would ask me to respond, Mike. I feel they've never been more relevant. I think they're needed now more than ever. You know, what college sports deliver to our campuses and communities, just the energy and the connectivity, the economic impact in many areas. But I think it gives young people opportunities to, again, get an education, compete at an institution, and figure out what their future is going to be. But most importantly, I think as fans, we love college sports. There's something that is unique. And I am one who, I love professional sports. I love the NFL, I love the NBA, but I believe in what intercollegiate athletics at all levels, divisions 1, 2, and 3 bring to young people. But I think as consumers, we love to cheer on those young people, you know, who are doing it for their universities, doing it for their families. And I think those unique stories are what connects us. And so I think, again, that's more of our responsibility, especially right now. And I've said this, we're in survival mode right now to a certain extent. People are losing their jobs, sports are being cut, opportunities diminished. We have got to stand up for what we believe in, the power of college athletics to be, but it's really for those young people who utilize college athletics as their path to a greater future. And so I am going to fight with everything that I have to protect college athletics. But I believe the short answer to that is college athletics has never been more relevant.
Shawn, really appreciate that perspective. And I agree with you. I think that college athletics is at a really good inflection point right now to continue to build and continue to grow. We're coming up here on 10 minutes left of the panel today. And so, Commissioner Moore, there's been a lot of attention and focus from Fortune 500, Fortune 50 brands as it pertains to the HBCU community. CSMG representing your conference and your individual schools in the marketplace. Would love your perspective as to how we can better tell the story and be more engaged with different brands that are looking to be involved in the HBCU community.
Well, what we try to do is we try to, in everything we do, we try to, inclusion is really at the core of, who we are. I mean, these schools exist because they provided opportunities, educational opportunities to people who otherwise would not have them. So, that's right, that's in our DNA. So when you look at the SIAC, for example, a lot of our story is baked into the initiatives that we pursue. Be it, giving women officials, being the first NCAA conference to provide women with the opportunity to officiate football games, or our partnership with the NBA Players Association and Michelle Roberts to provide coaching opportunities to former players. We've gotten, Darryl Walker, Ken Anderson at Fisk, and Mo Williams recently at Alabama State through that partnership. Lindsey Hunter, these guys had a difficult time finding employment, and I dare say that helped, I believe, contributed to maybe some larger Division I leagues beginning to give, former players opportunities. So most recently, we closed a deal with a large big box retailer, and we're going to pursue that partnership in a way that helps them to amplify their corporate values in terms of social responsibility. So I think right now, we talk about relevancy, with everything that's going on in the country. I think corporations realize, to Brock's earlier point, he said that Generation Z are ride or die. They're also, quite progressive. They also like to have their 401ks, invested in socially responsible companies. They also care about the environment. They also abhor, racism and discrimination against members of the LGBTQ. So again, it used to be, social responsibility used to be kind of a good gesture in terms of being a good corporate citizen. I think now more than ever, it impacts the bottom line in very meaningful ways. And when we approach the corporate community, the philanthropy, let them know that historically Black colleges, that's, pre-George Floyd, post-George Floyd, that's really at the core of who we are.
Yeah, and appreciate that education, and certainly that is who you are. Your progressive, forward-thinking abilities are second to none. I appreciate that. Tony, let's give you a final thought here as it pertains to the future of the media business and where you see this going across linear, OTT, and obviously mobile engagement right now is really at the forefront.
Sure, absolutely. I always, when people ask me questions in that vein, I also think about the 3D TV. When it comes to the viewership, we got to look at the people and how they're watching the games, right? 3D TV, people said this is going to be the next big thing. You're going to sit on your couch with 3D glasses and watch the game, but you ruined the viewer experience overall, and it just never took off. So we have to be kind of cognizant of that as we look to the future. I think things like AR and mixed reality will be great. If you look at any sporting event now that's on TV, they find ways to include mixed reality into that. I always sometimes look at it and can't decide if that graphic is real. Is it really behind that person or it's not? That's always a fun game to play. But that'll be big. But if we look to, the other thing you got to think about is where people are watching the game. And Mike, you touched on, the mobile piece of it. Everybody knows people are drifting away from cable. That's a no-brainer at this point, right? We all know that. But they're also drifting towards mobile devices and away from their big screen TVs. Because they're not tethered to their home anymore. They can watch this anywhere they want. So if you think about the way people engage with mobile devices, it's very different than the way they engage with the TV. If I'm watching a football game on my mobile device, I would love nothing more than to be able to tap a player and have a little mixed reality box pop up that says their stats in that game right now. Or even come off to the side on a flyout or anything like that. I mean, it'd be an incredible way to change the viewership experience because I'm on a mobile device. Don't put that on the TV because you don't want people having to tap on their TV to see device or to see stats. It's nonsensical. But the other thing to think about is, especially the Gen Z people and the way they're growing up. If you look at Twitch, Twitch is really big on microtransactions and donations. How's that going to play into universities and football games? If I'm watching a game, let's say I'm whatever university and I'm broadcasting a game on Twitch, you could ask for a donation on there if a big play happens and get people to donate right there in a little microtransaction. How big of a difference is that going to make? If you look at statistically the way my generation donates, it's not necessarily that annual giving. They're really more on event giving. So easy example, Ole Miss tore down the goalpost a couple of years ago. They raised something like $3,000 in an hour to replace the goalpost just by putting it out on a GoFundMe because people were so excited about the game. So looking at how those microtransactions can really be beneficial for A, the university, and B, for the name, image, likeness. If I'm a student athlete, how can I use the game that I'm playing now to get those microtransactions on Twitch at the same time? Or can a university provide that as a service? It's really going to be changing the way we interact with the games at that point.
Thank you, Tony. Ryan, last question for you is you've done some really integrated partnerships, whether it be the Geico with the blue goalposts, you've done a recent deal with the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society, and you're doing a lot in community engagement. Articulate the value of a partnership with the league and how your team gets behind the partnership.
Well, I think it comes back to our pillars and our who we are as a league, and community is at the forefront in many of our markets. We are the hometown team, and we take pride in bringing people together, and people support us because of that. So when we engage with a partner, we bring them into our family and put them front and foremost to our fans, and people get behind it. And we want to be engaging and interacting. With LLS, as you know, I did the big virtual climb. It tells a story. It brings awareness to the concept, and we're willing to go outside the box. Geico as the prime example is we've been with them for 5 years now. in traditional hockey, painting the goalpost blue, it pains the hockey traditionalist, but it brought a partner to the forefront. It was innovative, and quite honestly, now when I see red goalposts, those look, outside the box. So, the ability to understand what a corporate partner wants and then bring them into who we are is paramount to us.
Thanks, Ryan, and congratulations on all the great stuff that the league is doing, and hopefully you guys get back on the ice fairly soon. Brock, as a former player, gamer, what do you personally do to continue to build up your social following that engages with the brand community and the media community?
Sure. My advice to any former player trying to branch out into the video game world is understand this is an entirely different universe. You may be a star on your court or your field or your baseball diamond, but you can't approach it that way. Sure, your fans, if you're a Clemson player, your Clemson fans will come over. If you play for the Yankees, the Yankees fans will come over. But you have to understand there are already stars in place in this other world, right? There's the ninjas signing $30 million deals. There's the FaZe clans winning championships all the time. There's the 100 Thieves who have endorsements by Drake and funding by some of the most powerful VCs in the world. I would say the people who try to make that leap and say, hey, I'm a really good college receiver, or I'm an NFL quarterback. I'm going to start a Twitch and I'm going to be raking in the millions tomorrow. It doesn't work that way. There are established people in this world. I would say you need to be one of two things. You need to be very good, or you need to be a great personality. People watch to be entertained. So they want to see somebody who's much better than them, who they can learn from and can rack up 100 kills in this game, or they want to see someone who's funny and, hey, I understand you're not the best player, but you're hilarious or you're informative. So the best advice I could say is come in understanding this is not your world. And if you approach it that way, you can have success there, and that community will embrace you, but they can sniff out and many have tried and failed because they can't sniff out when someone comes in and says, I'm a celebrity out there, I'm going to be a celebrity in here. It doesn't work that way. And that's the best advice that I could give.
Thanks, Brock. Appreciate that. And we're going to take you up on some of those ideas.
Absolutely.
Shawn, I'm going to end this with you and bring it back to the broadcast side of things. So as Ray introduced you, you've done a phenomenal job making Stony Brook Athletics the home of SNY. You obviously have a really sound plan in place. And one of the things that you did last year was you actually had basketball broadcasts in Mandarin. And so as you think about domestic versus international distribution and exposure, we'd love to hear a little bit of your strategy and your vision as it relates to that.
Well, a lot of this goes back to our role in being the brand ambassador for our campus. And Stony Brook, as a heavy international base for particularly students in Asia, we felt we want to try to connect with a lot of our Mandarin speaking students, but also prospective students, because I believe they are they're an audience that we should not overlook just because they may not have grown up as fans of American football. Certainly basketball is an international game. So I think we're all trying to find that connectivity. And so for us, it's, you don't want to put all your eggs in one basket. I think it's how can you spread yourself, deliver quality content in a way that connects with people and use that ability to tell the story. Certainly in Mandarin, we can do that with Mandarin speakers, but as far as our SNY relationship, it was a huge opportunity for us, again, to, yes, put our games on linear with a great partner like SNY, but also have members of our campus community on at halftime. And we really used those football and basketball broadcasts as Stony Brook infomercials. And, it is a different approach, but that goes back to the question about college athletics and the relevance. I think, again, we are the primary brand ambassador for our university. There's not another marketing mechanism that we have at our disposal as powerful as college athletics. So those opportunities, those relationships, we're going to continue to pursue. I think there, as we know, there are new opportunities, new technologies. I think we're foolish if we don't learn more about them and take full advantage. And again, the consumer has shifted completely to how they take in game broadcasts. And quite honestly, it's not just about the game broadcast anymore. So we've got to tell our story in a more compelling way by any means necessary.
Appreciate that. And you guys are all storytellers and I did a great job on today's panel. We appreciate it. This will conclude today's episode 8. I know that I went off topic a little bit as it pertains to media, but I appreciate everybody's transparency, perspective, and insight on all these important topics that we face in today's world. 8 episodes done. CSMG will look to start the Summit Series again in October. And I can't thank you guys enough for today's panelists, along with all other panelists that participated in the CSMG Summit Series. So have a great day. This recording will go live effective tomorrow. And thank you all for being here. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.